Brian from Oakvale Wreaths and Decor, and I am back again to show you how to do another horse tutorial. Today I'm going to be showing you how to do, I'm going to do a Kentucky Derby themed horse. So what I'm going to be using today is, of course, the Unique and the Creek horse board. I like to use for my mesh horses the striped fabric mesh. I like it. I think it covers well. So that's, and it comes in the colors that I kind of like for horses. It comes in like a chocolate brown and the poly jute, natural burlap color, black, grays, whites, all the colors. We're going to be making the mane out of a rose garland I got from Walmart online. So we're going to see how that turns out. I'm going to make the racing bridle out of white 7/8 inch, just the canvas wired ribbon. And that's right now about all the supplies I think I'm going to use. So let's get started. And I'm going to show you how I start the horse doing poofs to create the body. So to start off with our poofs, I just scrunch up the end of the mesh and take a zip tie. I start at the very edge of the horse's neck. And I personally like using the same color zip ties as my mesh. I think it just blends in a little bit better. So for my poofs, I just kind of hold the mesh together like you would make a poof on another wreath. And I only do probably about, I measure usually about 4 holes, about 3 to 4 holes per poof. And then I just bring them back, that poof back to the next hole and zip tie in again. If you can see that. I like to have enough where that I can spread it out a little bit. And then I just continue on, and I'm using every hole, first and second row right now on the bottom for the poofs. And I just make sure that the ends are touching and even. I hold my poof and I put my zip tie in. I guess you could preload like your zip ties into the bottom row if you want. I just find it easier that I just add them as I go. Sometimes I think it's better to add them before you make your poof. And I don't really worry about pulling them apart until I get finished with the horse. That one was, I think, maybe a little small, so I'm just kind of pulling it up so it's even with the rest of my poofs. Measure, push it back, and then zip tie it in. So since this is going to be a Kentucky Derby themed horse, are there any themed horses or colors that any of you are interested in seeing how to make? I've done everyday horses. I have done Halloween. I've done Christmas. I've done Valentine's Day and spring. So then when we get to the neck, I put the angle holes here, and then I do the same thing. I make a poof. Then this is where I take my mesh and I unroll it and I bring it around to the other side. The direction I'm going to go now is back. So I again will attach to actually I'm going to use the second row holes and then the third row holes, and I'm going to be using on an angle. I make my poofs on this row. Instead of using the holes that are straight up and down, I'm going on an angle with them. So I curve my fabric mesh around. I like to have a little bit bigger poof at the base of the neck, and then as I get smaller, because I want the neck to be defined, my poofs coming back around get smaller so they're a little tighter next to the horse's neck. And again, just making sure that your mesh is together in order for you to make a poof. And I'm going to use the next hole over and then go up into the third row on an angle. And these end up being a little bit longer or wider poofs because there's more distance between the angle holes this direction. But I like that because it gives it a little bit different texture and movement for the horses, simulating the horse's hair. And then the next shared hole in the second row, up on the angle. Make your poof. And then you just continue on that pattern across the whole next row. The fabric mesh horses take a lot of zip ties. And it usually takes me about a roll and a half of mesh to finish one of these horses. Poof. And again, I don't think it's necessary that all the poofs are exactly the same. You know, you just kind of make your poof and keep going. If some of them look too big, when you come back, you try to fix it, or if it's too small, cut it out, change it a little bit. So now I'm at the end of the row, and where I'm at the neck, and I need to make my next curve to come around. And again, the same, I do a little bit of the same thing on this side as I do on the curve this side. At the bottom of the horse, I make them a little bit bigger poofs as they curve, and then I keep them a little tighter to the neck as I get closer up to the ear to keep the definition of the horse. So I move my mesh all the way over again. Make sure I have my mesh lined up. I want it. Kind of size it up. And then again, I'm using the shared holes. And going right, this next row is again straight up and down from each other. So again, it's giving you a little bit different texture, and I make sure to see that it's how I want it before I move on. So coming about this time, I usually, if I like everything, I'm gonna come and go through and cut off the zip tie ends that I've used. And then we continue on our way. Again, shared hole. And I go straight up to the next row. I make my poof. Zip tie it in. I don't know if you can hear my dogs playing, but I have 3 Frenchies and they're right behind me, wrestling around. So, like I said, let me know in any of the comments if there is a particular style or theme horse that you are interested in seeing done. I have ideas for several more that I want to do for you all, but I'm interested to hear what you guys think and what your thoughts are on colors or themes, or just give me some ideas. Then we just keep making poofs and zip tying them in. And I'm getting to my last, the neck, my last poof before I make my curve to come back around. So again, I take my mesh and I just bring it across the board so that there's a curve already started. And again, I'm using the shared holes on, now I'm on row 4 and 5. And I'm coming, and if you can see, I want the angle, I don't want my poof to be way out here so that the horse goes like this. I want it to come in, so I want it to stay on the same angle as what the horse's neck goes up at. Now I think because I'm actually skipping a hole. I'm making a little bigger poof here because I want it not to be quite the same and everything matching. So I just skipped one hole there. And then I'm going to skip another hole on this and make just a little bit longer poof. Not so that it comes up higher, but just so that it gets across the space to add a little bit different look to the horse so that not all the poofs are the same. And I think I'm going to do that again. I'm going to skip a hole and I'm going to go over, make a little bit longer poof. Just to change it up. Now I'm at the end. going to make one last poof. And now, once again, I think I'm going to go through before I go to my next row and snip off all these zip tie ends. So what I did is on this row, I went every other hole instead of going into every hole across, just to give it a little bit of variation, so everything wasn't quite lined up as much. And then I'm gonna take my mesh, move it back over, and start again. And we are again at the end, and we're going to make our loop to come back to the next row up. Now again, I'm at the end of my row. I have no more, there's no more holes here, so I'm going to take my mesh, bring it back around, and I'm going to go right. I'm not going to use the two perpendicular to each other. I'm going to actually use the one hole that is on the angle closest to the outer edge of the board for this poof. Then I'll move to the next one and go back straight up and down. And this is basically the pattern. I mean, for the whole horse. Again, where you want it to be a little bit more refined, like around the nose, or around the curve of the neck, you just make a little bit smaller poof than you would for the body. my mesh from rolling up now that I'm getting closer to the end of the roll. And one more at the end. Make it a little bit smaller. And then I'm coming back around with my mesh to the other side. And again, I'm coming in. I'm not going to use the shared hole that's closest to the neck. I'm going to go to the second hole in and then the one right above it for this one. I'm going to use get some of these ends cut off. And I think you can even do this a little bit different if you want to have a little bit longer poofs, like where you start getting to the point where you maybe skip a hole on a row and maybe do them a little bit longer on one row and then a little closer together on the next row. I think you can change it up and make it your design what you want it to be. Now I'm at the end of my roll of mesh. I'm trying to get the tape off from it. So then I'm getting close. I want it to come in, so I'm not even going to use, I'm going to go right in to one hole to the one right above it so that my horse's neck stays a little thinner. And then I use pretty much all of it that I can. And then in another poof or so, I'll show you how I just do the end of the roll. I think I can get one more. Now I do end up cutting a little bit of the end off, but I do leave enough where it can just tuck in. And I, just like how I started off, I just scrunch up, leave a little bit of a tail, and I connect it to the same holes that I ended on. So there's 2 zip ties in that one hole, and then I take the end and I just tuck it into the middle of one of the poofs so it stays secure, and then continue on. So I'm gonna see how I want this. I'm actually going to go with the shared hole and then the bottom of row 7 on a little bit of an angle, not perpendicular. I did it again. And making this one pretty small. Enough where I can move it out to cover the board, but where it's fairly tight to the horse's neck. And these look like they're going to be all on the angle holes because there's no more on this row that is straight up and down and perpendicular. The end, and I think I can fit one more poof in, shared hole to this one at the neck. Bring my mesh around. And this I'm going to bring all the way in, right back around to the 2 perpendicular holes, shared hole, and then the row above it. Now this row is going to end up going all the way down to the end of the horse's head, his nose. using my last shared hole of the horse's body up and towards its head. And then I'm just going to keep continuing on using both holes in row 7 for the next one. And then heading down the row again. Again, I'm using the shared holes and then just the next set of holes up. So I've reached where I have to actually go down now to the next row to fill in, because I can't go straight across with how I have designed this. So we're going down to the next row down with the bottom shared hole. And then just continuing across so that our poofs are always in the row right above where our last row was. And we just keep, again, going across. And again, I have to move up to the next row because I've been up on a little angle, just following my pattern. again at the end, bringing my mesh back around the direction I'm going. And I'm going to skip the hole right next to the outside of the board. And I'm going to come back to the next set because I want my poof to be closer, not too far out. I want the curve of the neck to keep following up and in towards the ear. And then I'm heading again back down on a little bit of an angle because I have to go and follow my pattern. So now I'm at the end of my board, and you see I'm kind of out of room. So what I'm going to do is bring this around, keep my poof, and I'm actually going to use the shared hole and then go to the outside of the board for one more small poof. And then if you see the hole, if you can see this one here at the very top of the horse's nose, I'm going to bring this around, the mesh around, and come to that hole and go around the outside of the board. And then I'm not going to tighten it because I just want to play around with how big I want it so that the horse's nose stays curved. There, I like that. So I have this much of my mesh left. I want to make sure that I have enough to make the ear. So I generally take about a 12-inch cut for the ear, and I'm going to set it aside over here. And I've got enough to do the last. If you can see, I still have some board left up here, so I'm going to do my scrunch again with my mesh. Even though it's got a little bit of a tail on it, I can easily clip that off. And I'm going to finish the last few poofs right below the ear. And I've got Mako going to this share, and I'm going to go to the outside of the board again with this one. And then I've got one last hole here to cover this part of the horse's head. So one final poof. Now I'm going to cut my end off. And again, I'm going to take it and find a poof to go pull it under and then spread out the poof. Clip my last final zip tie pieces. And so this, if you can see, is what we have so far. At the very end, I will go back and I will kind of spread out my poofs to fill in any gaps or any place where I see zip ties. But we're going to set this aside right now and we're going to make the horse's ear. So what I do for the ear it's been a while since I've made one. So I kind of find the middle part of my mesh and I fold it down. So basically then I have a bit of a triangle overlapping. And then what I do is I will scrunch and I will flip so that the seam of the horse's ear is on the inside of the petal. And I don't cut the tail off yet because we go to the horse's ear and now again, I don't put it straight up because most of the horses don't have straight up and down ears. So I usually go from the ear hole to the outside of the board and I'm going to tilt it forward so the tip of the horse's ear is looking the direction he's looking. Or she. Could be a she. And I don't tighten it because sometimes I don't want the ear to be as big. I kind of look at it for proportion before I do my final tightening. And I'm not so concerned about the board you can see here, right? Because we're gonna, with the forelock and the bridal and everything, we're going to be hiding all of that. So once again, I just kind of tuck the end into one of these poofs. And there we have it. We have a black fabric horse. Now we get to move on to the mane and the bridal and all the other fun stuff. I'm going to be using this 7/8 inch white ribbon because racing bridals is what I've seen a lot of. I don't follow racing a ton, but are white a lot of the times. So I start, usually I put it a couple holes in the top of the nose, and then I hold the board and put a staple in the back with the ribbon. And then I know kind of where I want to measure it to before I cut it. And I bring it around. Right there. Now usually I end up moving it on a little bit of an angle down so that it is one more row over than the top, so that it's not too far out to the horse's nose. Now once again, I have forgotten to turn my glue gun on. This is the part that I glue, but I'm going to just show you how I just fold it around the middle of the nose band, and then I bring it up to right behind the ear. And then over, and then I put another staple. Cut that. And as you can see, my zip ties do follow quite a pattern on the back of the board. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the brow band to the throat latch. So the brow band I usually put right, kind of cover up the zip tie of right in front of the ear. Put another staple in, and then I bring it down, kind of just eye it. And then I usually bring it right into the where the head and the neck meet in that corner. and I pull it up and then put a staple in it. So now we have, if you can see, now we have the Bridal on, and I would hot glue that later just with a little dab of hot glue. So if you remember from the beginning, I bought this garland, this rose garland from Walmart online, and it came in a pack of 2 that were 5 foot long. And so what I did is I cut one of them up already and combined them with using a zip tie. So I've made my own kind of mane pre-done here. So the stems, and nice, these bend. These are going to end up going up here and hooking in to the top of the horse, right underneath the brow band. So I need to find one of those shared holes, and this is going to come to the outside again. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to feed it through some of the leaves, stems, so that it stays put. I'm going to take those ends of the stems. There we go with that. Now I'm just going to kind of take, now that I've got the base at the top of the neck, I'm going to just manipulate the roses how I want them to go down the neck for the mane. And then once I get them kind of formed to how I want, because I wanted it to be fairly thick and a little bit overlapping to trail down. So what I'm going to do is I like that so far. So I'm going to take my furthest rosebud that's on there, and I'm going to zip tie that down into one of the board holes and go again around the outside and through a stem so that it stays, and then I can. So we have the mane, and I want to make sure it stays and I get the leaves turned up. And then I'll probably end up doing, once I get things where I want them, I'm going to zip tie the middle. I'm going to go to the spine of the garland. So I'm going to zip tie the 2 spines together. I'm going to find an outside hole that I can use. So, and then I am just going to work on, now that I have it secured, how my leaves, I want it to be full and covered. Covering the outside. I want our roses to be seen, not hidden. Just again, manipulating. Turning the leaves. Just until I like how it looks. I don't want things to stick out too far. This one is, I don't like. So, and there we have the rose mane. What I might do is, just so these, I might put one more zip tie in so these stay more where I want them. Because I don't want them curling over. So what I'm going to do is just hope that I get lucky. Pushing it through. Actually, I'll go up through the bottom of the hole. See where that comes out at. If I can find it. Oh, there it is. And go around that. Vine, and then I'm going to go back through the mesh. We're going to have to do that again because I didn't have it in the right way. There we go. There. That's better. Now I think the roses, they're going to stay a little bit more where I position them. And following, again, I like the mane to follow the curve of the neck. Now, for the forelock, I had just a small piece left over from the garland, and I don't know if it's going to be enough or if I'm going to like it, but we're going to see what it looks like. Because I don't, for the forelock, I don't want the bigger roses. I'm going to cut off. Because that just ends up, that's going to be too heavy up here. So I like that there. And then I just gotta find a spot. I think what I'm going to do is use the shared ear hole and go around the ear. To hold that in. And then again, I really like using the stems that can bend and manipulate how you want them. So there is the forelock, and what I'm going to do next is I think I'm going to actually clip some of the rose leaves off the other garland I had, and I'm going to fill in a little bit more up here before we finish. So the first thing I'm going to do now that I've got my hot glue gun on is I'm going to just add a little bit of glue to the bridal to keep it where I want it. So what I decided while I was waiting and playing around is that I took and I just snipped off a leaf because I want a little bit of coverage with the leaves up here. So and then I just kind of manipulate my leaf a little bit into, or the stem into, hold the mesh together a little bit. And then I clipped off, I just actually pulled off one larger rose stem or rose flower, and I'm going to glue that right up by the ear. So what I'm going to do to this one is I'm just going to go on the underside, put enough glue on there to, and then I usually just move it around a little bit so that glue takes hold. Then I wanted one more small rosebud in between. So I'm just gonna, again, go in between the mesh where I want that to be. And then I wanted one more, I clipped off one more bud, and I'm going to put, I wanted three roses up for this. So I'm going to just lift under, and again, I'm just going in between one of those poofs, moving it around a little bit so that it stays, and I think I am happy with how this has come out.